The wind pressed hard against the wide, curved path that cut through Daniel's ranch, carrying the dry scent of winter grass and the quiet ache of another year slipping through his fingers. The Texas horizon, usually bold and unshaken, felt muted that December morning, its light dimmed behind a veil of pale mist, as if even the sky had lost a little courage. A storm had passed the night before, leaving broken branches scattered near the old oak tree that stood like a weary guardian of what once was the Hart family's thriving land. Daniel tightened his worn working gloves, feeling the sting of discouragement settling in deeper than the cold. Rebuilding his family ranch had demanded discipline, focus, and long-term vision, yet the land responded slowly, almost stubbornly, as though testing the very integrity he tried to lead his life with. His inner strength felt thin, stretched the way old rope weakens after too many winters. He paused beside the fence line, straight, narrow, and honest in its boundary, staring at a single calf standing apart from the herd. The animal sensed something he couldn't name, its quiet unease echoing the unrest in Daniel's own spirit. He exhaled, watching his breath rise like a prayer he was too tired to speak. Christmas was days away, and the ranch felt heavier, emptier, quieter than it had any right to be. He wondered how a man could keep walking forward when clarity slipped through him like frost on weathered boards, when purpose cracked under the weight of slow progress, when direction blurred in the winter haze. And yet, it would be one small act of love, unexpected and humble, that would shift everything, setting in motion a miracle he never imagined. But it didn't start there. We must go back a little in time. If this story is already speaking to your heart, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of wisdom, purpose, and God's timing. Months before that weary December morning, Daniel woke each day before the first hint of sunrise touched the Texas plains. The ranch was quiet at that hour, quiet in the way only wide land can be, holding its breath under a fading night sky. He'd step outside with a lantern in hand, the tool of discipline his father once carried, its soft glow stretching over the frost-tipped grass. On most days, the mist clung low to the earth, lifting slowly as if reluctant to surrender its hold. As the world brightened, Daniel would whisper a moment of gratitude under his breath, a habit learned from his mother, who believed clarity often arrived in the gentle silence before work began. The ranch had been neglected for years before Daniel returned. His parents were gone. The land had passed through the rough hands of tenants who saw acreage but not legacy, profit but not purpose. When Daniel inherited it, the fences leaned tiredly, the cattle were few, and the soil felt restless from long misuse. But he came back with direction, a kind of quiet determination that leadership often demands before it rewards. Rebuilding wouldn't be easy, but he welcomed work that shaped character even as it shaped land. Most mornings, he walked the wide, curved path that wrapped around the property's eastern fields. It served as both a reminder and a prophecy. Every turn in the trail asked him who he wanted to become, and every step called him toward long-term vision. When the mist began lifting, he imagined God was peeling back another layer of doubt, offering renewed focus for the tasks ahead. What Daniel lacked in resources, he made up for in consistency. He repaired fence lines one post at a time, drove new stakes into stubborn soil, and reintroduced crops that demanded discipline and patience. He studied weather patterns with strategic thinking, learning how wind shifts signaled more than storms. They hinted at timing, God's timing, he'd remind himself, though sometimes it was difficult to trust. Neighbors watched him with a mixture of respect and quiet skepticism. They liked Daniel well enough, but rebuilding a ranch from near ruin looked different from maintaining one already thriving. It required resilience they weren't sure he possessed, courage they weren't sure he could sustain. They'd wave as they passed by in trucks, offering advice he didn't ask for, telling him what used to grow best, what wouldn't grow anymore, and how hard winters had a way of humbling a man's best intentions. Still, Daniel pressed on, not because he was fearless. Fear visited him often, especially when bills stacked high or when injured fences hinted at coyotes roaming too close, but because something deeper pulled him forward. Responsibility felt sacred to him. Stewardship wasn't a task but a calling, and the ranch was more than land. It was an inheritance of faith, the last physical echo of his family's integrity. Yet discouragement entered slowly, the way a shadow lengthens at dusk. First it appeared in small ways, tools wearing down quicker than he could replace them, cattle gaining weight slower than he hoped, seeds taking longer to sprout. Then, in bigger ways, unexpected repairs, debts that tightened like winter twine, long nights when he questioned whether his leadership had enough strength to withstand the burden he'd chosen. He walked that wide path more often during those months, hoping the horizon might speak something into him. Sometimes the light glowed warm and promising. Other days it dulled, offering no clarity at all. But Daniel kept moving, kept building, kept believing there was purpose in work that no one applauded, purpose in rebuilding something broken, purpose in honoring what his parents began. He didn't know then that discouragement was not the enemy. It was the shaping ground, the soil where spiritual growth quietly takes root, the place where a man learns discernment and the cost of integrity. He didn't know that God was preparing him for a moment that would come not through triumph, but through a single, ordinary act of kindness. One so small he nearly overlooked it. But that moment was still far ahead, for now Daniel stood in the dawn of the lingering past, hands steady, heart hopeful, eyes fixed on a horizon he was trying to trust. Long before discouragement carved its slow furrows into Daniel's spirit, he held a dream shaped by both memory and long-term vision. It wasn't grand the way city ambitions are grand. It was quieter, rooted in stewardship rather than success, purpose rather than pride. He dreamed of restoring the ranch into a place of stability again, a place where cattle moved with the calm confidence of animals that feel protected, where winter feed was abundant, where the soil responded with gratitude to hands that treated it with integrity. He pictured the old barn restored, the fences upright and honest, the fields stretching out with renewed resilience. He imagined children running through them one day, his children perhaps, laughing under a horizon glowing with the same soft light his parents once worked beneath. But more than that, Daniel wanted the ranch to become a refuge for weary neighbors, a reminder that God's timing is wide enough to hold both hardship and hope. His parents' home had always welcomed wanderers, struggling ranchers, traveling preachers, drifters seeking a warm meal and a quiet prayer before the road called them again. Daniel remembered how his father would pause before helping anyone, bowing his head in a moment of intentional living, asking for discernment, wisdom, and direction, and how his mother would place a steady hand on a visitor's shoulder, whispering gratitude for the chance to serve. Daniel wanted to preserve that legacy, not only the land, but the spirit that shaped it. One night, months before discouragement would test him, Daniel stepped outside carrying a lantern. The air was cool, still, and fragrant with the faint sweetness of cedar. He walked toward the old oak tree, the one symbol of endurance that stood through storms, droughts, and all the unpredictable seasons life brought. Beneath its branches, he knelt in quiet prayer. He didn't ask for blessing. He asked for clarity. He didn't ask for success. He asked for strength. He didn't ask for ease. He asked for direction. The lantern's glow flickered in the wind, casting soft shadows across the roots of the oak. Daniel closed his eyes, breathing deeply, letting silence become the soil where insight could grow. And in that silence came a whisper, not a voice, not a prophecy, but a simple understanding. Work with integrity, and the land will trust you again. It was enough. enough to steady him, enough to guide his decisions with emotional maturity, enough to anchor his leadership in something deeper than determination. When he opened his eyes, he felt a faint shift in the wind, a gentle reminder that divine guidance often arrives without spectacle, a subtle sign that God honored the humble desire of a man who asked not for miracles, but for wisdom. From that night on, Daniel shaped his dream with intentional living. Every fence he repaired carried the weight of purpose. Every seed he planted became part of long-term vision. Every early morning, he walked the curved path, strengthened his discipline, and every sunset he watched settle beyond the fields grounded him in gratitude. He believed, with a conviction that warmed him even in the hardest seasons, that someday the ranch would breathe again. Someday the soil would yield its trust. Someday the legacy would stand as tall and steady as the oak tree that listened to his prayers. He held on to that dream gently but firmly, like rope between knowledgeable hands, never too tight to cause fear, never too loose to slip away. He didn't know how many trials stood between him and its fulfillment. He didn't know how deeply discouragement would test his resilience. And he certainly didn't know that the beginning of the miracle he longed for would come through the smallest, quietest act of love. Discouragement rarely arrives with thunder. It slips in softly, like a cold draft beneath a door, until a man realizes the chill has settled deep into his bones. For Daniel, it began with subtle shifts, tiny fractures in the discipline that once anchored his days. Autumn had faded faster than he expected, leaving behind frozen soil that resisted every attempt at preparation for winter planting. Each morning he pressed his boot into the ground, testing it, hoping it had softened. But the earth felt as rigid as his own growing doubts. He would lift his shovel or the rope tied to a drag sledge, tools of discipline he'd used countless seasons before, only to feel them drag heavier than they should, like discouragement adding invisible weight. Clarity, once steady as a lantern flame, flickered. Some days it slipped from him entirely, like frost sliding off winter boards at sunrise. His long-term vision dimmed beneath the weight of setbacks he hadn't planned for. A section of broken fence left by a restless steer, a water pump failing without warning, feed prices rising just as his savings thinned. Little failures accumulated like debris after a storm, piling around his hope. Daniel still walked the curved path each morning, but now it felt longer, emptier, less willing to guide him. He could not tell if he was losing direction or if direction was quietly walking away from him. The horizon, usually glowing with promise, sat muted and grey, refusing to speak its usual encouragement. One night, after a long day of repairs, he sat inside the barn alone, lantern dim beside him. The cattle were restless, shifting in the straw as if sensing his spirit's exhaustion. A heifer let out a low, unsettled call. Animals often felt what men tried to hide. Their instincts reached places human discipline sometimes couldn't. Daniel leaned his back against a post, elbows resting on his knees. "I'm trying," he whispered to the quiet air. "But I don't know if it's enough anymore." The admission startled him. Leadership, he'd been taught, does not crumble in silence. It finds strength there. Yet all he felt was erosion, a slow wearing away of his inner strength. He tried to steady his breathing, tried to gather the fragments of resilience scattered across the weeks, but even prayer felt far away. Not absent, just quiet, like a friend standing nearby but waiting for him to speak first. The next morning brought no relief. The wind cut sharp as he stepped outside, carrying dust and disappointment across the fields. A portion of the fence he'd repaired only weeks earlier now leaned again, weakened by a storm-driven branch. The sight was small but devastating. One more thing undone, one more reminder that consistency seemed to yield little reward lately. He approached the broken section, running his hand along the splintered wood. Integrity required work even when work felt pointless. Responsibility required showing up even when purpose faltered. But emotional maturity doesn't save a man from weariness. Sometimes it only sharpens the ache. As he pulled new boards from the shed, his hands stiff with cold, Daniel felt his confidence slipping. The rope he carried snagged behind him, dragging against the frozen soil as if resisting the effort ahead. It felt symbolic, his purpose dragging, his spirit catching on every obstacle. For the first time since returning to the ranch, doubt asked a dangerous question. What if I can't rebuild this? What if the land doesn't trust me back? He paused, breath hanging in the cold air. His father's lessons echoed faintly. A man's clarity grows thin when his heart grows tired. But tired was too gentle a word. Daniel felt worn, stretched, scraped hollow by expectation and the slow grind of unmet hopes. He repaired the fence anyway. Not quickly, not proudly, but faithfully, post by post, nail by nail. The work steadied him some, but not enough to restore the confidence he once carried like second skin. By late afternoon, a storm gathered on the horizon, darkening the edges of the ranch. The wind shifted, unsettling the remaining cattle. A horse by the barn tossed its head, sensing the pressure of the incoming front. Daniel secured everything he could, then stood at the barn entrance, watching dust swirl in uneasy spirals. The storm hit with a sudden fierceness. Rain slicing sideways, thunder rolling across the fields like an accusation. Daniel worked to quiet the animals, pulling tarps tighter, soothing them with steady hands even as his own heart trembled. When the worst passed, he stepped outside into the cold, wet quiet. The ranch felt wounded again, branches strewn across fields, fresh debris against the repaired fence, mud swallowing his boots. His discouragement deepened, settling heavy in his chest. He looked toward the horizon, but it offered no golden glow, no warmth, no insight. Just gray, just silence, just the long echo of a dream growing dim. Daniel lowered his head, water dripping from his hat brim. He felt as though he was standing in the middle of a life he believed in, but no longer recognized. The land waited. The storm moved on. But Daniel remained still, caught between his calling and his fatigue. And though he didn't know it yet, this internal unraveling was not the breaking of him. It was the shaping. Internal trials shape a man quietly, but injustice strikes with precision. It does not slip in like discouragement. It arrives with a face, a voice, and an intention. For Daniel, that face belonged to Clint Mercer, a neighboring rancher known for his sharp business instincts and even sharper tongue. Clint was the kind of man who understood land only in terms of leverage. He saw ranching not as stewardship, but as strategic positioning. How much he could own, how much he could influence, and how much he could take before someone realized he'd taken too much. And to him, Daniel's struggling ranch was not a legacy. It was an opportunity. Clint stopped by one late morning under the pretense of neighborly concern. Daniel heard the rumble of truck tires before he saw the dust rising across the wide curved path. The air was cold, the sky pale with winter light, and a faint wind rustled the dry grass, just enough to stir unease. Clint stepped out, boots polished, coat clean, confidence worn like armor. "Daniel!" he called, tipping his hat with a grin that reached his mouth but never his eyes. "Heard the storm did some damage. Thought I'd come check on you." Daniel, though wary, nodded politely. "Appreciate it. I've got things mostly under control." Clint looked around slowly, studying the weakened fences. The barn roof still missing a few shingles, the cattle that moved with unsettled caution. "Looks like a heavy load for one man," he said. "Ranches like this need stability, consistency in the hands running them." Daniel felt the hidden blade in those words, but kept his posture steady. "I'm doing the best I can." Clint stepped closer. That's the thing, Daniel. Sometimes the best ain't enough. It was the first escalation, subtle, strategic, undermining Daniel's confidence by targeting the very responsibility he held sacred. Then, Clint made his true intention clear. "I've been thinking," he said, folding his arms. "If you're willing to sell off the eastern fields, just the unproductive ones, I'd take them at a fair price. Would ease your workload, give you breathing room, maybe help you rebuild the rest." Daniel's jaw tightened. That land wasn't merely acreage, it was part of his parents' dream, part of the long-term vision he vowed to restore. Selling it would fracture the ranch's unity, cutting away not dead weight, but future strength. "No," Daniel replied quietly. "That land stays part of the ranch." Clint shrugged. "Suit yourself, but think on it, son. Pride don't feed cattle." He left with a dismissive wave, driving off in a cloud of dust that clung to the air long after the truck disappeared. Over the next days, Daniel tried to shake off the encounter, but discouragement already lived beneath his ribs. Clint's words found cracks, widening them. Doubt echoed louder, direction blurred again, emotional maturity steadied him, but barely. Then came the second escalation, not with words, but through a calculated act. Daniel woke early to check the cattle and noticed hoofprints near the north fence line. Too many, too deep. His gut tightened. Something was off. When he reached the far edge of the property, he saw it. A portion of the fence deliberately cut, cleanly, intentionally. And beyond that cut fence, 3 of his cattle were grazing on Clint Mercer's land. Daniel's stomach sank. He examined the wire. Clean snip marks, not storm damage, not animal interference. Someone had cut it in the night. Someone wanted his cattle to trespass, and Daniel knew exactly who benefited from making him look incompetent, irresponsible, unfit to manage a ranch. A rancher who can't control his herd, can't control his land. That's how small-town rumors start. That's how reputations weaken. That's how deals and legacies are lost. Daniel hurried to guide the cattle back, but the ground was muddy, uneven. One calf stumbled, panicked, nearly injuring itself before he steadied it with soft words and firm hands. By the time he got them home, Clint's truck was already parked near the fence. "Well, well," Clint said, stepping out slow. "Cattle crossing onto my property. Dangerous business. Shows a lack of, stewardship." Daniel's pulse hammered, not with rage, but with a deep, aching disappointment. "Your fence crew didn't cut that wire," he said steadily. "And neither did the storm." Clint smirked. "You accusing me of something, Daniel? I'm saying someone wanted trouble." Clint lifted his brows, pretending offense. "All I see is a rancher who can't control what's his." The injustice pressed hard, heavy, unfair, expertly aimed. Clint was manipulating the narrative, trying to corner him. But Daniel knew that integrity isn't proven when things go right. It's proven when someone tries to bend you. "No," Daniel said quietly. "What you see is a man who's not selling his land." Clint's expression sharpened. His strategy had failed, at least today. "Suit yourself," he muttered, "but this ranch is bleeding, Daniel. And a man can only bleed so long before he gives up." He left with that final strike, leaving Daniel standing by the fence, tired, soaked, discouraged, yet resolute. The days that followed were heavier still. Rumors began circulating in town, subtle but pointed, that Daniel was losing control of the ranch, that he was overwhelmed, that he lacked the leadership needed to restore what was broken. Clint never said these things publicly, but strategic men rarely need to. They know how to plant seeds in the soil of conversation and let others water them. Daniel felt the pressure tightening around him. Bills loomed, fences needed repair. The land responded slower than ever, and discouragement grew teeth. Yet every time he felt the temptation to surrender, something steadier rose within him, not pride, not stubbornness, but moral courage. the kind that refuses convenience when character is at stake. He would not sell. He would not yield to manipulation. He would not abandon the legacy entrusted to him, but injustice has a way of wearing down even the strongest hearts. And though Daniel didn't know it yet, Clint's schemes were closer to collapsing than either man realized. Because cleverness may rise fast, but character outlasts cleverness every time. Clint Mercer's downfall did not arrive with spectacle or retribution. It came the way winter frost takes a weakened crop, slowly, naturally, and without anyone needing to lift a hand against him. Ambition, when untethered from integrity, eventually becomes its own storm. It began with whispers, small at first, drifting through town like dust along a dry road. A rancher to the south noticed water lines rerouted during a drought, benefiting Clint's land but starving a neighboring pasture. Another rancher reported missing cattle, only to find them grazing along a boundary suspiciously altered. At first, people hesitated to speak openly. Clint had a reputation for strategic thinking and persuasive charm, but character has weight, and so does the lack of it. One afternoon, Daniel walked into the feed store and felt eyes shift toward him, not with judgment this time, but with a quiet, growing awareness. The store owner, a man older than the oak tree on Daniel's property, cleared his throat. "Daniel," he said, "you didn't hear this from me, but people are talking, and not about you." Daniel felt no satisfaction, relief perhaps, but nothing resembling victory. He simply nodded, paid for his supplies, and walked out into the crisp December air. Within days, rumors became truth. A state inspector arrived in the region after multiple complaints about land boundary violations. Clint tried to charm him, tried to redirect, deflect, diminish, but manipulation crumbles fast under the weight of documented facts. Neighbors, once silent, found courage. One after another they came forward, each carrying small pieces of a larger picture: cut fences, altered markers, suspicious losses, quiet coercion. None were dramatic alone, but together they became undeniable. Daniel stayed out of it. He did not accuse, did not interfere, did not speak Clint's name. Leadership meant knowing when to stand firm and when to step aside and let truth do its work. 2 weeks later, Clint's ranch faced heavy penalties. Buyers withdrew from his winter cattle auction. Land deals he'd arranged fell apart, and the man who once walked with polished boots and sharpened confidence now carried the uneasy posture of someone finally confronted by the weight of his own choices. The town did not celebrate. In rural places, people understand that a man's failure, no matter how justified, still carries sorrow. But they also understood something deeper. Cleverness may win seasons, but integrity wins lifetimes. One evening, as Daniel repaired a section of fence near the north boundary, he saw Clint's truck pause on the road. For a moment, neither man moved. The wind blew softly across the open field, nudging dry grass in slow waves. Clint didn't step out, he didn't speak. He simply nodded, a small gesture that held resignation, perhaps even regret, and then drove on. Daniel returned to his work with steady hands, not proud, not vindicated, just grateful that he had chosen integrity even when it cost him clarity, even when discouragement tried to bend him. The ranch felt quieter that night, more peaceful, the kind of peace that comes when storms, seen and unseen, finally begin to lift. He didn't know yet that his own breakthrough was near. He didn't know that God was already preparing the subtle miracle that would change everything. But the signs were gathering, softly, faithfully. Like dawn approaching long before a man notices the sky brightening, the week before Christmas carried a strange stillness across the Texas ranch country, a quiet that felt less like absence and more like anticipation. The storm clouds that had troubled the land began thinning day by day, and the early mornings softened with a faint golden tint along the horizon, as though heaven itself were brushing hope back into the earth. Daniel felt the change before he understood it. The discouragement that once clung to him like dust after a hard ride began loosening, not quickly, not dramatically, but gently, like a rope easing from a burdened post. Still, he held no expectations. Subtle blessings often arrive without announcement. One crisp morning, long before sunrise, Daniel woke to the muffled sound of footsteps outside the barn. He slipped on his working gloves and stepped into the cold. His breath rose in pale clouds. The sky hovered between night and dawn, a place where clarity often waits to speak. Near the barn gate stood a young boy, no older than 10, a thin jacket wrapped around his small frame. Daniel recognized him, Evan, the grandson of a rancher who had been quietly struggling since early autumn. The boy held something in his hands, a tiny bundle wrapped in burlap. "Morning, Daniel," Evan said, voice trembling not from fear, but from the cold. Daniel approached slowly. "What brings you out here this early, partner?" The boy unfolded the burlap to reveal a newborn calf, weak, shivering, barely lifting its head. "Grandpa said we couldn't keep her," Evan whispered. "Said she probably won't make it through the day. But I remembered how you helped our heifer last spring. I thought maybe you'd try to save her." Daniel felt the weight of the moment settle deep inside him. A fragile life, a child's belief, a small act of love delivered through trembling hands. He took the calf carefully, pressing it close for warmth. "You did right bringing her," he said gently. "Let's get her inside." Together, they laid the calf in a stall lined with fresh straw. As Daniel worked, rubbing the calf with blankets, preparing warm milk, checking its breathing, Evan watched with wide, hopeful eyes. The barn was quiet, the wind calm, as if creation itself paused to witness the moment. After a while, Evan spoke softly. "Grandpa says God sees everything, even when we don't understand what he's doing." Daniel nodded. "Your grandpa's right." "Do you think God sees her?" Evan asked. Daniel looked at the calf, frail, trembling, but still fighting. He felt something shift within him, a lifting mist inside his own heart. "Yes," he said, "God sees every life he creates, and he never arrives late." As if on cue, the first rays of sunrise broke across the horizon, casting a golden glow through the barn slats. It illuminated the stall, warming the air, softening the edges of the world. The light touched Daniel's face, then Evan's, then settled over the calf like a blessing, a golden horizon, the very symbol Daniel had longed for in the hardest days. The calf stirred, breathing a little deeper. Not healed, not strong, but alive with a new steadiness. Evan gasped softly, "She's getting better." Daniel felt tears burn behind his eyes, not from sorrow, but from a breakthrough long overdue. The discouragement that had shadowed him for months cracked open, replaced with purpose that felt renewed, clarified, anchored. He realized then that the small act of love that brought this miracle to life wasn't his. It was the boy's. The selfless courage of a child who refused to let despair have the final word. As the morning light grew stronger, the wind shifted, a gentle, almost imperceptible movement. But Daniel felt it. After months of struggle, it was as though God whispered through that soft wind, "You are not forgotten." Outside, the ranch animals, normally restless after storms, stood calm. Even the skittish colt near the south corral lowered its head peacefully, as if sensing that something sacred had settled over the land. Daniel's heart swelled with gratitude, not the loud kind, but the quiet, enduring gratitude that grows from spiritual growth and emotional maturity. He wasn't receiving riches, success, or unexpected solutions. No, his blessing was insight, subtle, humble, transformative. He turned to Evan. "You just saved more than that calf," Daniel said. "You reminded me why this ranch matters. Why long-term purpose is worth the fight. Evan smiled shyly. I just didn't want to give up on her. Daniel placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. That's the kind of leadership this world needs. The barn warmed slowly as the sun climbed higher. The storm had ended, not just the weathered one outside, but the deeper one that had raged inside Daniel for far too long. Hope returned that morning, not like a thunderclap, but like a sunrise, steady, faithful, glowing with divine timing. And Daniel knew with quiet certainty, God never arrives late. In the quiet days that followed, Daniel found himself walking the wide, curved path with a steadier stride. The ranch had not transformed overnight, nor had every challenge vanished. But something within him had shifted, something deeper than resolve and stronger than discipline. He now carried a clarity that did not waver with circumstance, a direction anchored in purpose rather than progress. He thought often of the calf, of Evan's trembling hands, of the sunrise that broke through when he least expected it. And from that moment, Daniel understood a truth his parents had lived but never needed to say. Leadership begins the moment a man chooses integrity over convenience. Those who plant in faith harvest clarity in God's timing. And often, God strengthens a man long before he blesses him. The ranch would continue demanding resilience, discernment, and steady hands. But Daniel no longer feared the slow seasons. He no longer doubted the long-term vision placed in his heart. And he never again questioned whether heaven saw his struggle. Because on a winter morning, through a small act of love delivered by a child, God whispered back into his life the assurance he needed most. Purpose still lived here. Hope still grew here. And the miracle had already begun. In a world where the storms of life can shake even the strongest, remember this: it's not always the big miracles that change everything. Sometimes it's the smallest acts of love, the quiet moments of trust that lead us back to purpose. Like Daniel, when you stay steady in your faith, when you choose integrity over ease, God's timing will always come through. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Subscribe now and join us as we continue exploring stories of strength, faith, and miracles. You won't want to miss what's coming next, where God's hand is at work even in the smallest details. And right here on the screen is the next story of transformation. Click to watch, and let's keep walking this journey together.